TFA fam, hope you're all doing well. It is the Week 13 wide receiver rankings show. It's your boys Cody and Kev rocking with you. There's always a lot to talk about whenever we get to wide receivers, so we're just going to jump directly into it. We're just going to get right into the meat and taters of this thingy here. Kev's wide receiver one rankings for the week are as follows: Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, Keenan Allen, Julio Jones, Stephon Diggs rounding out the top half. And then at 7, it's D-Hop, Allen Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Calvin Ridley, Kenny Golladay, A.J. Brown coming in at the 12 spot. Obviously, with these guys, there's really not a lot that we have to go into. You're just looking at the, studs of studs. Terry McLaurin is, quietly making his case as being quarterback proof. Honestly, if they could figure out the quarterback situation down there, that offense could get a lot of fun with him and Antonio Gibson, whoever else they bring in. Is there anybody on this list? I think the hardest thing, as I was looking at your rankings and the Fantasy Pros consensus rankings for wide receiver, is just that there could be a lot of difficult decisions to be made when it comes to start set decisions, because there's a lot of guys on this list who are probably 2, 3, 4 rounds apart in terms of their draft capital, that a lot of people who are looking at this list might have multiple wide receiver ones as they as we're heading into week 13. So are there any of these guys that that are really jumping out to you that you want to gush about?
Well, one, I just want to say, God, it was fun watching Tyreek Hill on Sunday.
My God, dude, that was
God mode that he went. 269 total yards, 200 in the first quarter. Just absolutely torched. Could have done a lot more, but 13 receptions, almost broke the record. And it is good to know that 2 Chiefs actually hold the top 2 spots in the most fantasy points ever scored in fantasy football. Jamal Charles is still number 1 with his 5 touchdown game that he had, I believe, against the Broncos. So, we don't need to spend a lot of time. DK Metcalf is DK Metcalf, Keenan Allen, Julio Jones, Stephon Diggs, all those guys. I do love Allen Robinson, especially with Mitchell Trubisky. Allen Robinson always just gets peppered with targets whenever Trubisky's in there. He's always his first read. And so that is good to see for Allen Robinson owners. And he had a good game last week, found the end zone twice. So, it's a shame that Allen Robinson's never had a good quarterback really in his entire career. But, he had his best or second best game of the season, going all the way back to Atlanta week 3, where he had 28.3, but he had 27.4, targeted 13 times, 8 receptions, 74 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So it was really good to see from Allen Robinson. A great matchup against Detroit. There is not a corner on Detroit secondary that can stop Allen Robinson. And it was kind of funny to see Sunday night. He was actually liking people's tweets that were saying he should go to different teams, and then took away those likes after people caught on to what he was doing. So I don't know. He does not have a contract, so he could be a free agent next year. Other than that, Kenny Golladay, hopefully he returns. We know that this Lions offense is so different whenever he's out there. So if he can get back into the fold, this is good matchup against Chicago. Or it's not, I shouldn't say good, but Kenny Golladay is the type of player that can. I think is a little bit more matchup proof, and so I still think it's a fine play. I think this game actually has really sneaky shootout potential, Lions and Chicago. So I do like this matchup here, and so I think Kenny Golladay does deserve to be a wide receiver 1, and then A.J. Brown is A.J. Brown. I mean, the dude. It's funny because he's another guy we actually had some questions about, people not knowing if they should start him against the Colts last week, and he had really quickly a 69-yard touchdown. Nice. Really quickly in that game. So really paid off for fantasy owners. The dude is just electric when he gets the ball in his hands. He's one of the best yards after the catch players in the league. So I think you can play him definitely this week going against the Browns.
Yeah, thankfully, I believe all of the A.J. Brown questions we got, we sided with A.J. Brown and did not tell anybody to sit him, because like you said, there were a lot of questions concerning him. And, Corey Davis definitely deserves some cred as well, and some props, because he's been playing quietly really well. Moving on to wide receiver 2s for week 13. Leading things off, Michael Thomas, Brandon Cook sitting here at 14 with Will Fuller going on the PED suspension. Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen returning from the COVID list. Robert Woods, Devontae Parker, Tyler Lockett, Justin Jefferson, Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, Jarvis Landry, and Michael Pittman running things out here at 24. Like we talked about on the quarterback show, I think you had Jared Goff down at like quarterback 20, quarterback 18, somewhere in that range. With Kupp and Woods both sitting as mid ranked wide receiver twos. I do like how this is setting up for him. And this whole offense, I think, is a big bounce back spot after that abysmal showing against the Niners. Justin Jefferson, I'm assuming, is taking a little bit of a bump here with Adam Thielen coming back, but things are looking good in Minnesota as far as that goes, with Adam Thielen kind of getting up there in age and dealing with injuries, kind of on and off. Deebo Samuel coming through, and just we talked about on the wide receiver show. I mean the running back show. Rankings for this week, how seemingly nobody's talking about James Robinson. I just want to say for Deebo Samuel, everybody was on Brandon Ayuk's jock talking about, oh, look what he's doing in this offense. There's no one else around him. Nick Mullins, blah, 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 blah. Deebo Samuel comes out, has a better game than Ayuk has all season, and crickets. Not a word. I did not see anything about Deebo Samuel and how well he was playing. I just had to get that out there because that man definitely deserves respect. And it will be interesting to see next year how everything looks with a healthy Kittle and, a second year of Ayuk. But anyway, I digress. Kev, is there anybody on this list who's really jumping out to you? I do like the Devontae Parker ranking coming in as a mid wide receiver too. He's been playing really well. And obviously, if we get another week of Fitzpatrick, I think that bodes a lot better for his fantasy outlook than it does with Tua. But who on here is sticking out to you, and who do you want to talk about as far as the wide receiver twos?
Yeah, Michael Thomas I think is interesting because of this offense and not necessarily wanting to throw the ball as much. I do think that Atlanta has been terrible against the pass, and you could definitely throw against them. And the last time these two teams played, Michael Thomas went, I think, 5 for 50. If you look at him, his numbers really, I mean, a lot of the stuff is still there for him. He's still seeing like 30% of the targets, first in the league in weighted opportunity rating as well. It's just the fact that they just haven't really had to throw as much. Last week against Denver, like they had no reason to ever throw the ball. I think Taysom Hill had 16 attempts or something like that in that game. So I think this is a game where they have to throw a little bit more. And so I do think Michael Thomas, while he does not have the ceiling that he normally would have with Drew Brees out there, I do think this is also a matchup at home. I do like Michael Thomas a little bit. Brandon Cooks, we already talked about, without Will Fuller out there, like the guy could see 15 targets. Devontae Parker is a great option this week. We saw last week against the Jets where he played 100% of the snaps. He ran 42 routes, targeted 14 times, 8 receptions, 119 yards. But did not find the end zone, but still put up almost 12 fantasy points. And then even the week before that, when they played Denver, he had 9 targets, 6 receptions, 61 yards, and 18 touchdowns. So with Preston Williams out, it's really kind of like a lot like we saw last year whenever he really started to come on. I think Devontae Parker, is a solid wide receiver to rest of season. And then, I agree with Deebo Samuel. I think that he is always underrated. And then the last two I just want to touch on really quickly is Jarvis Landry. It was really good to see what he did last week. This is something that I've been kind of waiting for because of the fact once Odell Beckham went down, we didn't really get to see it in the game, some of these other games, because the Raiders game, the Texans game, and Philly, was just terrible, terrible, terrible weather that they played in. So they didn't really have to throw the ball. But last week against Jacksonville, targeted 11 times, which is exactly what I felt like was going to happen. 8 receptions, 143 yards, a touchdown. He was wide receiver 3 on the week last week. And so, I think in matchups where they're going to have to throw the ball, like Jarvis Landry is going to see a ton of targets. People that have kind of held on because it really hasn't been a great year for him. Prior to that, you're looking at 7, 10, 9, 5, 4 fantasy points. Like nobody really have started him. I think in these matchups where, we do get some good weather, I think that Jarvis Landry is a great play and somebody, especially in PPR formats, is going to see a ton of options. And then Michael Pittman, I know a lot of people were super high on him last week. He didn't really come through, but he still saw 9 targets in that game, saw a red zone opportunity as well. Over the last 3 weeks, he's seen 4 red zone targets. He is clearly Phillip Rivers' favorite target. And, but last week he struggled a little bit, two receptions, 28 yards, but he did have 93 air yards, which led the team last week as well. So, but he just didn't come through. But in this matchup this week against Houston, I think Michael strong play. So I do like Michael Pittman in this matchup here against the Texans.
Yeah, I think Pittman is in a nice bounce back spot. And like you mentioned, the box score does not look good in terms of his production, but the 9 targets in the air yards is something that you can look to point to as a positive. Let's go ahead and round things out with the wide receiver 3 rankings for the week. What else does Amari Cooper have to do for you, man? What else does this man have to do? You have him sitting here at 25. Then we have Sterling Shepard, Chase Claypool, Christian Kirk, DJ Chark, Corey Davis, who we already touched on a little bit, Juju coming in, Cole Beasley, Darius Slayton, CeeDee Lamb, Tim Patrick, and Keke Coutee. Now on this list, who sticks out to you? Who do you want to talk about? And then who do you we have some of these every week. Is there anybody on this list who you think we're going to get the most questions about on Sunday?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think Amari, looking at him, like he has a lot of games here where he's kind of hit or miss. Like last week against. So last week against Washington, he was. He really had a really good game. He had 23.2, but weeks prior to that, 14, 12, 1, 15, 20.94, 31 was a big blow up game, 17, 16, 18. Like he's been solid. Like he's been a really good, wide receiver too. This week they're going to get the Ravens. Now again, we're going to have to wait and see, what all comes with the Ravens, and that's kind of where I'm at. I'm using him, assuming that they're going to have their full complement of defensive backs, and I think that lowers a little bit of Amari Cooper's ceiling. But I do think Amari Cooper is a borderline wide receiver 2 this week, and I think I can, again, somebody you probably have a little bit higher, but this isn't a great spot for him. Their offensive line is banged up, so Amari Cooper is somebody that can always go off, much like he did last week against Washington. But we'll see on that with how things shake out with the Ravens side. Sterling Shepard continues to play really well. Again, I think this is a good matchup for him and Darius Slayton, but that is also going to have a lot to do with is Daniel Jones out there, because if it is Colt McCoy, these guys drop down significantly down with Colt McCoy back there, because Colt McCoy is just not good at football. I would certainly lower these guys down, but this is with the thought of Daniel Jones playing. Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, I could probably have them a little bit higher. Washington's defense has been a little bit better this year. They've done a pretty good job. They get pressure on the quarterback. Could I have Chase Claypool a little bit higher? Yeah, I probably could. All right, with the Steelers wide receivers, I could probably have them each a little bit higher. I do like Chase Claypool a little bit more than Juju Smith-Schuster. Regardless, I think every single week, whether you own a Steelers wide receiver, you can play them with confidence. They have just done a great job all year. Christian Kirk, now in this matchup where they're going to be facing the Rams, I do think that you probably expect that Jalen Ramsey is probably going to shadow DeAndre Hopkins. Now, that doesn't mean that he's going to shut DeAndre Hopkins down, because, listen, in his career, DeAndre Hopkins has done a good job against Jalen Ramsey. Most of the coverage is going to be going to DeAndre Hopkins, so I do think Christian Kirk can have a little bit of a bounce back. He did not really have a great game last week, but none of the Cardinals really had a great game outside of Kenyon Drake. So there is that. DJ Chark, we'll have to wait and see if he does return this week. If he does, I think it's a decent matchup for him. Corey Davis continues to be undervalued this entire year. Like he is definitely one of Ryan Tannehill's favorite targets. If the Titans have to air it out, which we kind of expect them to, with where I have Ryan Tannehill this week, I do think Corey Davis is a strong wide receiver 3. Cole Beasley, especially if John Brown is out, makes a lot of sense as a flex option. CeeDee Lamb, I think that he is somebody that is probably going to see anywhere from 6 to 8 targets, and I think he has a nice floor, so I don't mind that. Tim Patrick I have up here because they are playing the Chiefs this week. They're going to have to throw the ball. They will have all their quarterbacks back. It will not be Kendall Hinton back there in the passing game. So there is that, and then Keke Coutee without Will Fuller is somebody that I think is in line for quite a bit of targets. I think we really could be looking at a game where he gets 10 targets in this matchup against the Colts. So I do like Keke Coutee some. I think he's somebody that they're going to have to utilize. Whether they still don't have Randall Cobb, so they're going to have to throw the ball. And I do think Keke Coutee makes some sense and somebody that people probably should be looking to add this week. We did not really, I don't think we had him in the streaming or in the waiver video that we did, because at the time we did not have that news that Will Fuller was going to be out. Now that we have that, it kind of changes everything. Where do you view Keke Coutee now, and where would you look to utilize maybe like Fab or waiver priority to add?
Oh boy, dude, that one's so difficult, but at the same time, it's kind of straightforward because who else do they have? Like Brandon Cooks is going to get his. I think he can operate as the wide receiver one, but they released Kenny Stills as well. Like Kenny Stills is not part of that team anymore. So outside of, like, I know they have Isaiah Coulter, who's he either was drafted really late or was a UDFA possibly. I think out of like Rhode Island, I want to say. But other than that, in the tight ends, like he's going to have to be utilized. So in terms of Fab, in your waiver priorities, I think with as deep and as many options as there are at wide receiver, like Michael Pittman is still floating around that 50% ownership. Same thing with Corey Davis. Like I'd much rather have those guys. I don't think you have to go crazy on Fab or on your priorities. I'd put a claim in on him, but I honestly wouldn't use much just because of the other options that are sitting out there. And then just to touch on the Steelers, and you were talking about kind of having them a little bit lower. It's wild to me to see how good Washington has been on defense. I mean, they're giving up the second fewest points per game to wide receivers. They're third in pass DVOA. It just doesn't add up. Like it doesn't match at all with with how bad they've been like as a team and what their record is, and with how well that their defense is playing. So I just think it's something that we should keep in mind going forward throughout the rest of the season. But where would you have?
I don't think I would spend a ton on him either. I think that he will have some games where I think he could pop off a little bit, but I think once Randall Cobb comes back as well, I think that he kind of falls back down the pecking order. I still think he's probably third or fourth in terms of target share, because I think that obviously Brandon Cooks is going to be ahead of him, and I mean Duke Johnson can end up seeing more targets, and I think Jordan Akins as well. And maybe they run more 12 personnel and use Darren Fells or Kahil Waring, I think is also an option who they just got back. So I wouldn't go out and get crazy with adding Keke Coutee through waivers. I just think that with him, that I think there's an opportunity for him to see more opportunity, for him to get more opportunity, but I do not know that I would go out and just blow, because I prefer to save Fab or high waiver party, especially this time of the year on a running.
Yeah, you outlined some of those guys on the on the waiver show that we did, but I mean Akers is still pretty available. Dobbins was sitting around like 50% ownership. So those guys absolutely need to be. And then we already talked on all the handcuffs and everything. So if you want to go check that out, you can find that on your podcast or on the YouTube app. So I think that about wraps it up for the wide receiver rankings. We appreciate all you guys rocking with us. If you're checking us out for the first time, whether on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you're listening to, please hit us with a subscribe. If you're on, podcast form, please hit us with a rate and review. That really helps us out as well. So be sure to join us on Sunday with any lineup questions you have. You can always drop them in on, any of the previous videos that we've done. We'll get the notification. We'll make sure we answer all of your questions. So until next time, we'll talk to you guys soon. Hope you guys have a great week.